Comic Book Savant, episode 392. Welcome back to Comic Book Savant. I'm your host, James Harris. This episode is going to be a new countdown episode. It's been a little while since I've done one, but this episode we're going to be counting down my favorite Marvel Cinematic Universe heroes. But before we get into that, as always, I'd like to give a shout out to my friends over at the Comics Podcast Network. You can find them over at comicspodcast.com. If you like what I do here on this show, it is literally hundreds of different podcasts and internet shows listed over at the Comics Podcast Network that are breaking down comics as far as you can find shows on individual publishers, superhero teams, individual characters, you name it, they pretty much have it over at the Comics Podcast Network. So if you have a moment, stop by, check out some of the content there if you're in the market of finding more comic book related content. And last but not least, I'd like to give a shout out to the sponsor for this episode, which is my friends over at InStockTrades.com, one of the best places you can go online when it comes to collected editions, manga, any type of bound comic book edition you can think of. They pretty much have it over at InStockTrades.com. They have discounts ranging from 35%, 42% up to 50% off with their deals of the week. On their homepage of the site, they update it weekly. I think it's on Tuesday afternoons. They update for the new deals of the week, and they spotlight a certain number of books that you can get up to 50% off. Also, if you place an order $50 or more and you're a customer base within the U.S., you get free shipping, which is also always a bonus. But also, if you're abroad and you're not within the U.S., you still get all the great savings. You just don't get the extra bonus with the free shipping. But they have some of the lowest and most competitive international shipping rates around. So definitely don't let that discourage you at all, because you can still save a ton of money. But all that being said and all that out of the way, let's jump into this episode. So I was digging this whole concept that it came up. I used to do earlier on in the podcast years ago, I used to do my top 10 list. And I always would fudge it because certain things I couldn't make up my mind and tie it on, ties on. So I would always get more than 10 things of anything I was counting down in there. So I kind of reworked the concept recently and just was like, hey, I'm going to just count down what I'm going to count down. So I sat down and thought about all my favorite MCU heroes, and I didn't just include the characters from the movies. I also encountered characters from the TV shows as well, because shows like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., because it's tied in and to the cinematic universe, as well as the Marvel Netflix shows. They're all tied into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, even though they don't officially cross over. It is crossovers there because they mention and acknowledge events that happen in the universe. So I encompassed this all together when I came up with my list. So with all that being said, letting you know kind of what the prerequisites were for me coming up with this list. And everybody might not agree, and I understand that, but again, this is just my opinion, having fun with it and doing this episode. So for me, the first one on my list, and again, this is from worst to first, I guess, is how this is going to work. First for me is Daisy Johnson, played by Chloe Bennett on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. as Quake. I didn't care much for her character in the very beginning of the series, but as time passed, she's really grown on me, and with this last season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., she's really coming to the forefront, and I would love to see her character kind of cross over with the larger MCU with the movies, but with the division between the TV division and Feige and the movies, we'll never probably see it happen, which sucks, because I think some of the Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. characters especially would work so great in the MCU, considering that Coulson's character came from that, and that's what started the whole Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. thing. It's a shame that we'll never get that cross back over to the movies. Next for me is Benedict Cumberbatch as Dr. Stephen Strange. I really like his take on the character. I've never been super into Doctor Strange as a character from comics. I think the most I've read of Doctor Strange ever is really during Brian Michael Bendis' run on Avengers and New Avengers, and during Civil War, after Civil War, when all that was going on, he was with the New Avengers team. That's the most I kind of hands-on experience I've really had with Doctor Strange. He's always a character that I've always been kind of fascinated with from the old Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, when he would make appearances on that, and even some of the more recent Spider-Man shows that were like on Disney XD, they would have Doctor Strange on there. So I would see, different takes of him, and I always kind of enjoyed the character, but it never strongly led me to his comics like that to read them. I always had intentions to read them, but it never compelled me to dig into the character deeply. And at some point I want to, but it never works out. For all my good intentions, it never quite works out that way. Next is Samuel L. Jackson's Nick Fury. We go back from his first appearance in Iron Man, on. He's been an essential part to the MCU. We wouldn't probably have the MCU without that cameo at the end of Iron Man that really started everything that we know now as the Marvel Cinematic Universe without Sam Jackson. So he's vitally important. I loved seeing a little bit more of him in action from Captain America Winter Soldier. I loved that appearance and that, and kind of seeing him attacked and seeing how BA, Nick Fury really is going to be interesting to see with Captain Marvel coming up. And, we're going to kind of get more backstory on more Nick Fury and seeing him younger and see a little bit more of him in action. That'll be really cool to see when that comes out next year. Next for me is Kobe Smulders' Maria Hill character from the Avengers. Maria Hill's character, I think her character, I know a little bit of Maria Hill's background from the comics. She's kind of been all over the place. She was the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. for a minute, and then she was dethroned during Secret Invasion. Then she kind of came back, and she's been this real utilized character. I wasn't a huge fan of her beginning in the comics, but I've always really liked from the very beginning, always liked Kobe Smulders' take on the character, and I think she's a little bit more likable in the movies than she was in the comic books. She's a little bit more friendly and more approachable. She's a very rigid and kind of rough edges character, at least how she was originally introduced to us in the comics. But I really like her take on the character and would like to see more. I liked, again, seeing more of her in action in Captain America Winter Soldier. And that was like the biggest role she's really kind of had in the MCU to this point. But I really have enjoyed her the times I do see her on screen as the character. Next for me is Jeremy Renner as Clint Barton, a.k.a. Hawkeye. I feel like he's one of the most underutilized Avenger characters out of the main team. I'm a huge Hawkeye fan. I've never made any qualms about that. I even like Jeremy Renner in the role. They just haven't given him a ton to do. They've tried to correct, him being the one that was mind controlled and kind of like a puppet or a pansy in the first Avengers movie, but he still really hasn't gotten his just due. They've upped his role gradually as the movies have gone on, hopefully, because we didn't see him in Avengers Infinity War, that we will see him in a larger role in the fourth movie coming out next year. I'm hoping so. He finally get his just due, and I hope they don't kill him off, because I hope they do more with him, because Jeremy Renner is such a great actor, and I feel like he's perfectly cast as Hawkeye, but you gotta lean into all that great history from the comics with his character and really do something with him in these movies going forward. Next for me is Tom Holland as Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man. Just perfect casting with this. I've thoroughly enjoyed him from Captain America Civil War to Spider-Man Homecoming to Avengers Infinity War. they just did a really great job. And casting is everything. And when you look at excuse me, some of these roles, it's just like it's pitch perfect casting, and you can see it on how the fans receive these characters and how we immediately just like care for the characters when the right actor's in there, everything just clicks into place. And Marvel, more so than anyone else, has just done such a great job with casting these iconic characters from comics with the right actor. It's all about pairing it up, and they've done a really good job with it. Next is Don Cheadle as James Rhodes, aka War Machine. I didn't know how I initially felt about it because, they always talk about like at a certain point they have to replace certain actors in certain roles. Well, we know Don Cheadle wasn't James Rhodes in the first Iron Man movie. It was, what's his name? I'm seeing his face. Is it Terrence Howard? I want to say it's Terrence Howard. I just that's bad when I totally blinked. I'm getting old, though. I'm 43 now, so I tend to whiff on certain things when I don't mean to. Iron Man. Let's see. I want to say it's Terrence Howard. I'm seeing his face, but I just can't remember his name. Yeah, Terrence Howard was Rhodey in the first movie, and they came back at Iron Man 2, and then they inserted Don Cheadle in the role, and he's grown on me. I felt like he's more... I didn't feel like Terrence Howard's Rhodey was more of a lackey than a peer and a really like trusted friend. And because Rhodey always kind of stood up to Tony, and they were like really good friends, and he could call Tony on his BS. And I felt like Terrence's rendition of the character did that very much less. So I felt like when Don Cheadle took over the role, it was more so the James Rhodes I remember from me reading the Iron Man comics in the 80s, in the mid 80s, and so when Rhodey was like really introduced, and when he took over as Iron Man, and even leading into the War Machine armor and everything, that he embodies the character, the true character from the comics, way better than what Terrence Howard did. So I never missed Terrence Howard in that role at all, and they did a good job in recasting that, and it was never like lingered and talked about. He just took it and made it his own and ran with it, similar to the next person on the list, which is Mark Ruffalo. Though I thoroughly enjoyed the Hulk movie that Ed Norton was in, and I love that movie. I feel like it's one of the most underrated movies in the MCU. Mark Ruffalo really took Bruce Banner and the Hulk and made it his own, and really made him a super likable character, and he's just been phenomenal, the popularity since he's taken over the role that the Hulk has really had in these movies. He's probably one of the most popular Avengers characters ever since he appeared in Avengers 1 on, and we can't not have a conversation, not talk about him how he's utilized in Thor Ragnarok as well as Avengers Infinity War. He's just been hilarious, serious. He's really done a lot with that character, and I really enjoy his work with the character, I have to say. Next up, we have Tessa Thompson as Valkyrie. Even though we've only seen her in Thor Ragnarok at this point, I always think about the scene, the very, I think, first scene we see of Tessa in Thor, where she's like drunk and they're capturing the guys, the bandits or whatever, have captured Thor when he first lands on the planet, and she comes out, she's drunk, and she's trying to use her devices like to control the guns to shoot them and stuff. It's just so, it's again, she's not the Valkyrie from the comics, but she took it and made it her own, and I just kind of love her take on the character. And you see her background and see like why she was like hiding and away, and so I like the little backstory they gave her. It's going to be interesting what they do going forward. Will it be another Thor movie? Will we see her potentially in Avengers 4? What are they going to do? Because I really like her character, and I definitely want to see more of her in a bigger role going forward for the series in the MCU. Next up is Anthony Mackie as Sam Wilson Falcon. I love I love the character of Sam Wilson. He really never was on my radar as a kid. You know, I always thought Falcon was kind of a ridiculous character with the feathered wings and all that kind of stuff. What really brought Falcon into my radar is, I want to say this was somewhere in the early 2000s or so, when Jeff Johns was over at Marvel and he wrote Avengers. On his run, he brought Falcon kind of back onto the Avengers squad, and I liked his take on the character, and he really put him as a character, you know, with the updated version of him on my radar to take notice of the character. And then Anthony Mackie, which I've always kind of liked over the years as an actor, getting the role, and I liked immediately that he was a trusted friend. Like, his chemistry with Chris Evans, Steve Rogers' character, just clicked immediately. That very beginning scene of Captain America, the Winter Soldier, at the very beginning of the movie when they meet at the park, and they just click immediately, and you like how they're best buds, and you understand it, and their chemistry is phenomenal. But then seeing him in his cameo appearance, like in Ant-Man, and him going one-on-one with Ant-Man, which is one of the, you know, like, funniest scenes like ever. I just like him in a role again, pitch perfect casting, and I'm glad they've increased his role a little bit by little bit as the movies have gone on, and that how he's a trusted ally and a true peer to not just Cap but the rest of the Avengers. Like, he's fit in, and he's in that team and a vital part of the team. I really like that as well. Let's see. Next on my list is Jessica Henwick. And she's from Iron Fist. She plays Colleen Wing over on Iron Fist. And I felt like that she literally, honestly, was the saving grace of the first season of Iron Fist. I felt like her story was more compelling than what Danny's was. Like, the whole nine. I knew her work from Game of Thrones as being one of the three Vipers or what have you. And she just really took this and ran with it, and she's just, like, you know, appealing. I know, like, nothing about Colleen Wing from the comics, because I didn't read much of the old school Iron Man Power Fist and the Sisters, the Dragon and all that. So really my introduction to Colleen was through Iron Fist, and I immediately just attached to the character and loved her journey from the first season. I loved the episode in with her and Misty in season 2 of Luke Cage, which is awesome, which I gotta see the Sister of the Dragon show or spinoff. They need to do something with them too, because their chemistry is immediate, and it has me interested, and I want to go back and kind of read more about Colleen and Misty Knight based on these kind of performances from seeing these characters on the Marvel Netflix shows. Where they really, because of the format, you really get a chance to flesh them out more than you can with these other characters that are just in the movies. The ones from the TV shows, you know, you have, if you're talking about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. characters, you have 26, 23 odd episodes. Then with the Netflix series, you have hour-long episodes, 13, you know, episodes a season, that these characters can really be fleshed out in a way that it takes quite a longer time for the same characters in a film, 2-hour feature-length film, to kind of get the same development and growth as a character. Next for me is going to be Paul Rudd as Scott Lang, Ant-Man. Though from my review, I wasn't the hugest fan of Ant-Man and the Wasp. I do like Paul Rudd as Scott Lang. I think one of my biggest takeaways from that movie, I just felt like they dumped his character down so much, and I just felt like that did so little. It didn't progress his character development. It kind of regressed it some, so they need to do some work with him. It appears from just like pictures that have leaked and have got out about Avengers 4 that he plays a vital role in that movie. So I hope they course correct some of the mistakes I felt like they made in handling the character in Ant-Man and Wasp, and kind of elevate him back to the status he was coming out of the first Ant-Man movie, because I didn't feel like they had to push him down to elevate Wasp. I think they could have been peers, and I think that's kind of the mistake they made there. But again, I hope they course correct it through the Avengers 4 movie or following Ant-Man sequels, if there are going to be any. since we really don't know what's coming after Avengers 4 too much in the MCU right now. Next for me is Ming-Na Wen. She's Melinda May from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. She is the most BA female in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I know they say that Gamora is the deadliest woman in the universe. Well, we ain't seen it yet. We've seen Melinda May kick much booty on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. If you watch that show from season 1 to season 5, it ain't no better chick in the MCU than Melinda May. I put her against anybody almost, and I feel like she'll come out a winner because you've seen her in fight after fight, fighting aliens, fighting just supernatural creatures, fighting other agents. She just does it. She's such a great character. I love Ming-Na Wen. I mean, I remember her from being a kid and being around my grandmother and mother and them watching the soap operas, and I think it was As the World Turns. I remember her as a young actress, and like seeing her now, it's such a totally different character, and she just takes it and runs with it. She's such a good actress. Her character is so complex and multi-layered, and they've done such a great job from the series beginning to now with her character. I would love to just see her pop up in the MCU in a film at some point, but again, it probably is never going to happen. But I feel like she's such a great character. Next for me is Chadwick Boseman, T'Challa himself, Black Panther. I mean, from minute 1 of Captain America Civil War, when Boseman comes on screen, he just commands it as T'Challa, even further so in Black Panther itself, and then even in his appearance, though it was somewhat minor in Captain America Infinity War, he's just great as the character, and I can't wait to see more of him in that role. He's up there with like Downey Jr. and Chris Evans. Like, he is my Black Panther T'Challa, and I know little about Black Panther. I've read a little bit of the comics because coming out of the movie, I wanted to know more about the character. Most of my background is from the films and a little bit here and there from the different cartoons he was used in. He was used in one of my favorite cartoons, which was Avengers Mightiest Heroes. It came out before the most recent Disney XD series came out, which was a phenomenal series, which I hated. It got canceled, but it was in that whole... It got canceled because of that whole transfer of assets over from when Disney bought Marvel. It was one that Marvel was doing, and it was very close to comic book accurate, and he was one of the centerpieces of that team. And they canceled that series and did the more XD stuff, which I never quite got into on the level I got into that first series. That was Avengers Mightiest Heroes. I need to go back and get that show. I need to buy it digitally to add it to my collection, because I would love to go back and watch it. They handled like Secret Invasion. They hit like so many comic accurate storylines from the Avengers in that series. I want to go back. I need to go back and get that series and watch it. It was really great. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it or not, but it was really a good one. Elizabeth Olsen as Wanda Maximoff, Scarlet Witch. I don't know what it is about Elizabeth Olsen in that role. I didn't know much about her as an actress outside of she's the sister of the Olsen twins. And her character, I just love the arc that her character has gone on through the movies from Avengers Age of Ultron on. And the more I see her in a role, the more I like her in the role, and I like that character. Most of my I know Scarlet Witch. I was a big fan of in the early mid 80s when they did Avengers West Coast. That was really where like Wanda came on my radar a lot, and I used to be a fan of the old school, the 80s Avengers teams, where it was like her, Vision, Wonder Man, Beast on the team, and then they broke off and they had the West Coast Avengers where Hawkeye was the leader of the team. It was like Hawkeye, Iron Man, Vision, Scarlet Witch, and they focus a lot on their relationship. Some of the stuff that they're pulling from and including in the movies are their romantic relationship and things like that. They're pulling a lot from that mid-'80s West Coast Avengers, those comic books and stuff like that. So I'm really familiar with it. And she's just likable in the role, I have to say. So I've really enjoyed her and her development as the character as the movies progressed. Next for me is Chris Pratt as Peter Quill, a.k.a. Star-Lord. He's like Han Solo, but Marvel's Han Solo with as Star-Lord. And I just like from Guardians 1 to Guardians 2 to even in Avengers Infinity War, he just is such a great fit in that role. There's nothing more else you can really say about that. Excuse me, I haven't read much from Star-Lord in the comics at all. I want to change that at some point. I've picked up a couple of the series on sale from the Guardians of the Galaxy since like the movie. Some of the series, they've had a lot of different series that I think one went 26 issues, it canceled it, restarted another one. I did pick it up because of coming out of the first Galaxy movie. I've accumulated some of the series and some of the miniseries and stuff like that. So I want to get into doing a deep dive into Guardians so I can know more from the comic side about the characters, but I know what I know of Star-Lord comes strictly from the movies at this point. Next for me is Bradley Cooper's Rocket. I never thought I would fall in love with a raccoon, and Bradley Cooper I love Rocket. He is I've said this before, he is like one of my favorite overall characters in all of the MCU. I never thought I could believe in a talking raccoon, but they made me do that. That's magic, people. That is comic book movie magic. They made me fall in love with a raccoon. I love that. I love Rocket. That's all I'm going to say about that. I've gushed about him enough in previous stuff, so I'm going to leave it alone. Next for me is Scarlett Johansson as Natasha Romanoff, a.k.a. Black Widow. It is a crime that she hasn't had a movie already. I'm glad they're finally working on it and fast-tracking something for her. Her character has evolved, greatly through her first appearance in Iron Man 2, which, people talk about how bad a movie that was. When I was doing the countdown that I was doing the beginning of the year, in the last year, beginning of this year, where I was counting down, the top 100, comic book movies or whatever, I went back and revisited Iron Man 2 because I hadn't watched it in a long time. And that movie is not as bad. It's kind of like where people down Avengers Age of Ultron. It's not a bad movie. Yes, at the time, both of those movies were stuck with the burden of setting up and was stuffed with a lot of plot lines that didn't make sense at the particular time. But both of the stuff, a lot of stuff that came out of Iron Man 2 set up a lot of stuff that happened in the MCU later, as well as Age of Ultron. And when you go back and you look at those movies, they're not nearly as bad. And she's really good in that movie, and you've seen her character evolve so much and get better and better since then. And when I went back and watched the movie, I was like, man, she was really good even in this movie, which kind of gets overlooked at this point because people just associate it with it being such a horrible movie, which I don't think it is. I think I would, after going back and watching it, I think I would go back and watch Iron Man 2 in certain cases before I would go back and watch Iron Man 3, just by a small margin. But again, that's just my personal opinion on that. Next for me on my list is John Bernthal's Frank Castle. I didn't know how much I felt about his character the very first time I saw his character in Daredevil season 2. I was kind of torn about his take on the character, the previous takes that I had seen, and how much I liked him and how much he was kind of being true to what I've known. I've always had a fascination with Frank Castle and the Punisher's character from the very beginning of his appearance in comic books. Just him being like this anti-hero. I've just always been fascinated with the character, and I've read a lot of Punisher, comic books, and I even talked about one of my favorite single issue comics of all time is a What If issue they did in the 80s that I got off a spinner rack, where they're like, what if the Punisher's family didn't die, in the park or whatever, and he still ended up becoming long story short, he still ended up becoming the Punisher, but it's just been a character I've always been fascinated with, and I've read multiple runs and I've reviewed multiple runs of Punisher comics over the years on the show, and he's a character that for whatever reason I hold near and dear to my heart, and I didn't know if his rendition was going to be something, or his take on the character was going to be something I liked, till Punisher season 1 came out, and he's the Punisher. He's the Punisher of Punishers. We've had a lot of different actors play the Punishers, from Dolph Lundgren to what's his name? I'm seeing his face. Whatever. We've seen different actors play Punisher. We've seen like 3, 4 with Bernthal now play the Punisher, but he is the definitive actor as Punisher. He's my Punisher now and forevermore. He kills it, like literally kills it. Next for me is Kristen Ritter as Jessica Jones. I didn't necessarily think she was Jessica Jones when I first saw that she was cast in the role. But again, I never read Alias. I had the omnibus, and I never got a chance to read it before I ended up ditching my collection and selling it. So I know of Jessica Jones when I first read about Jessica Jones in Young Avengers, and she was a way different character from what she was in Alias, and then from her Bendis' New Avengers run and her relationship with Luke Cage. That's where I knew her from, which is a way different character from where she started in Alias. I acknowledge that. As the series has gone on, she's really taken the role and made it her own. I don't know how source accurate it is to the comics and Alias, where the character was in the books, to her take on the character. I don't know, but I just know like she's clicked for me as the character, and I love her as the character. And I've really enjoyed season 1 and season 2. A lot of people dogged season 2 of Jessica Jones, or like they said they couldn't get through it. It was such a slog. It was a really good show, really good season, and it was a lot of good character work done by her in the show as well. And she's really good in that role. Next, I definitely have to go with Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock, aka Daredevil, in the Marvel Netflix Daredevil series. I'm hype about season 3 whenever we get it. I don't know if we're going to get it before the year's end. I know we got Iron Fist coming out. I'm assuming that's going to drop. I think it's filming, or it has been filming, season 3 of Daredevil. Maybe we'll get it by year's end or very beginning of 2019. I'm just ready to see it because it's been a while, because all the other shows have been coming out. So I'm definitely interested in seeing the next season. He does a great job encompassing that line of Matt Murdock as well as Daredevil, because we've seen other actors do, like, they can do one, I've had this talk numerous times about the whole who was the best Batman, and sometimes necessarily who's the best Batman wasn't necessarily the best Bruce Wayne, and so on and so forth. But I feel like he does a great job encompassing the character as a whole, both sides of the coin of the alter ego and the hero itself. And he does a really great job. I really like Charlie Cox as both Matt Murdock and Daredevil. Next for me is Mike Coulter as Luke Cage. It's a funny thing, because when I first saw Mike Coulter in Jessica Jones season 1, I was like, I understood the beefcake factor, and women went wild over him immediately. And I was like, well, does he have the acting chops? And as time has gone on, and really coming out of season 2 of Luke Cage, and seeing the dramatic change that the character has taken, and the things that he's had to deal with, and the choices he's making taking a toll on him, I really think Mike Coulter is like one of the more underrated actors on this list, because he doesn't have the pedigree. I've seen him in a couple of movies since Luke Cage season 1, but I had never seen Mike Coulter in anything before Luke Cage. And he's really a good actor, and they've given him a lot to work with, especially in season 2 Luke Cage, and he knocked it out of the park. So he's definitely an actor that I would like to see more places going forward, but he is definitely Luke Cage through and through. Next for me is one of my favorite characters on this list, which is Haley Atwell's Peggy Carter from Captain America: The First Avenger. Then she's, like Coulson, has done a lot of crossing over. We got her in the cinematic universe, and she's been in First Avenger, Civil War. She's in Ant-Man, the first Ant-Man. And then she was on episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Then she had 2 seasons of her own show, Agent Carter, as well, which was a great show that I just felt like it shouldn't have been canceled. It was really good, but people just weren't really watching it. I pray maybe down the line, once this Disney streaming service comes back, that they can revitalize that show, because she was down, and they left so much stuff on it. It was a huge cliffhanger to where the show was going, and she has talked about numerous times of wanting to try to come back and do the show. She tried to push to see if they could get the show picked up by Netflix, but Netflix didn't want to pull the trigger on it. But maybe it might be something in the works, because she's talked about in numerous interviews on how she loves the character and how she wants to do more with the character, and seeing that it seems like her relationship with Disney has strengthened, because she was just in the Christopher Robin movie with Ewan McGregor, that it seems like her relationship with Disney is only getting better. So hopefully that means down the road we might get Agent Carter back on the Disney streaming service, because it was a great show. And I'm not a big fan of period pieces, but I just dig her as the character, and they had a lot of fun with the show, and it was really just a fun breath of fresh air from the other shows that were on TV, comic book shows that were on TV. Number 3 for me on my list of favorite heroes from the MCU would be Chris Hemsworth as Thor. His character's kind of been all over the place. If you look at from the first Thor movie to the different Avengers movies to Ragnarok, where they took a drastic change with his character, to Avengers Infinity War. But all in all, I think Chris Hemsworth has been tremendous as Thor, even though a lot of times in his own movies he wasn't the focal point Loki was, but he has really made this character something special, and has really evolved the Thor character with Thor Ragnarok. And I think he finally found his take that he can really run with the character. So I hope they do more Thor movies coming out of all this. But again, everything's a big question mark, because we know a lot is going to change after Avengers 4. How it will change, if he will still be back as Thor, is all going to be interesting things that we're going to need to see play out in due time. But I hope to see him more in the role with a more substantial, meaty story to work with, to really spotlight his talent. And he's a great comedic talent. That's why Thor Ragnarok, I think, worked so well, is that he's underrated as a comedic actor. He's tried the serious and action kind of thing, but I think he's an action comedy kind of guy, and they need to focus on that more and play to his strengths, because that's where he's best at. Number 2 for me is Chris Evans, Steve Rogers. I just love this dude as Captain America. I don't want to see him go. I hope they don't kill him off. I mean, he's just so Captain America. I mean, when I go back and I look at my history in comics with the character, it goes back to, again, mid-early 80s. I mean, I remember the run of Cap, and I don't know who was writing it then. I want to say maybe it was Mark Waid. Maybe way back then. I can't remember who was the writer in the 80s, because I was super young back then when I was reading that stuff, where he had his motorcycle with a shield on front, and he was riding across the country, stopping to town, like righting wrongs, and it's like he encompasses everything from anything I've ever read of Steve Rogers in Captain America in comics. He does, like Chris Evans, like literally embodies that on camera and off camera, like he is like real life Steve Rogers. So that's all I'm gonna say about that. And number one, of course, has to be without a doubt Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, Iron Man. Pitch perfect casting from minute 1, second 1. We see him on screen as him. I mean, I don't think Robert Downey Jr. acts as Tony Stark. I just think he is Tony Stark. Like it's just is pretty much him. So that's why he gets the number one spot, and he's made all this possible. As much as Nick Fury did stepping into that, Robert Downey Jr. has been that backbone, and he's been included in so many different movies, and they've used him as a through point and connective tissue to so much, and he has just taken it and ran with it, and I think we have a better MCU because of him being involved in it. So that is my countdown of the MCU heroes. You might let me know if you agree, or disagree. Let me know. I mean, you can always go to the website where I post these episodes. Everything is always up on comicbooksavant.com. You can comment there and let me know what you think and give me your responses, or email me and let me know if you agree or disagree with some of the choices that I made. Again, they're just personal choices that I made based on what I like, but I like to hear what you guys think. Also, don't forget, the contest is now live for, like I mentioned previous episode, and that I have 6 prize packs. I'm giving 2 away per each format. I'm giving 2 away through the podcast, 2 away from the YouTube channel, and 2 on Instagram. So you can register once for each in each area to win one of these one of these prize packs, and they're broken down as such. I have 3 prize packs that are 11 comic issues and 1 trade, and then I have 3 packs that are 9 comic books and then 1 trade. So and they're relatively current issues, variant covers, an assortment of a lot of different stuff that I've received physical comics of recently that were donated from the unboxing and the videos I was doing for in-stock trades and DCBS, as well as the great bundle that Ron Sanders hooked me up with from Comic World Florida as well. So they all sent me stuff. Again, I'm into the digital, so I just took the digital codes out of the books, redeemed them, because that's how I pretty much read everything, and then I'm throwing everything and giving you guys back the love. So you have to go to the earlier episode this week and go to the website. If you want to register via the website, you have to go to comicbooksavant.com, go to the last episode, which was a Comic Book Savant Extra episode, and comment in that comment section for that episode. Those are where I count the entries for this. If you've already subscribed to me on Instagram, you follow me on Instagram, you have to go back and comment on that post that I mentioned the contest on. You just don't subscribe. You have to actually comment on the post, and I'm talking about the contest. And I'm talking about, it was on Instagram. Once you follow me, if you go back to the pictures I posted like a 2-picture image that's showing all the different that's showing the comic bundles that I put together, and you have to comment, not just like it, comment on it as well, and that'll register you there. And also on YouTube, which is youtube.com/ Comic Book Savant. You go there, subscribe, and I haven't done it yet, but I'm gonna do a short little video talking about the contest. It'll be coming up in the next couple of days. I've just been swamped with a ton of stuff, and I've still been having issues with my foot, so I've kind of been off my feet a little bit. So I'm trying to make sure, coming off my birthday, dealing with my foot, and trying to launch the contest. And I just launched merch as well. I have 2 t-shirts. I briefly talked about it. I just set up I set it up through Teespring, and I actually even set up a storefront. So I mentioned last episode, if you go to comicbooksavant.com, you click on the support page, at the bottom it'll be a link. It was a link to the 2 different t-shirt designs. Actually, now it's a link over to the Teespring store, so you can see it there. The shirts are, I think, like $23.99 or something like that. They go up from, I think, small all the way up to 5XL, or so it's the size for everyone. It's 2 different T-shirt designs. One is the old school original logo I had for years with like the mask and the comic book Savant and everything on it, and the design is printed on the back of the T-shirt. I think it comes in black and white. And then I have the newer logo that you see now on the cover art and everything else. You'll see that one. That one's comes in multiple colors. I think it comes in 5 different colors, and everything's printed on the front on that T-shirt. So it's 2 T-shirt designs. So you can check that out. And again, it's on comicbooksavant.com. Click support, and then the very bottom link is a link to the Teespring store, and I'll have it linked there, so you guys can go over, check out the T-shirt designs, and order one if you want to help support the show. And they look cool too. So again, you have some cool, stylish merch for the show, representing your love for Comic Book Savant, and you're helping the show at the same time. Also, don't forget about the Patreon as well. It's patreon.com/Comic Book Savant. Links are there on the support page as well. You don't have to, it's not required to become a Patreon, but if you decide to sign up for the Patreon account and support the show through that, you'll be getting the further episodes of Comic Book Savant Extra. They're exclusive to Patreon for backers at $1 or more. So if you just kick $1 in, you continue to get those episodes directly through my Patreon campaign. And again, all of this goes into helping support the show. So if you like what I do and you have at least $1 to kick a month, you continue to get all the full content that I release out. Again, it's not a requirement because I'm still going to be putting out 1 episode a week here. You'll just get that extra episode a week via the Patreon for just, again, $1 a month. But it's not a requirement. You'll still get free content here. You'll always continue to get the free content here. I think I covered everything because I do such a bad job, and I'll finish recording and I'll be like, I forgot this, I forgot that. Also, throw some love to my friends over at InStockTrades.com. They have done a phenomenal job, and a lot of this stuff that I'm giving away is based off of InStock Trades, as well as my friend Ron over at Comic World Florida. Links to both InStock Trades and Comic World Florida are on the website. If you go to comicbooksavant.com, go to the links page, links to all that stuff is there. So definitely check it out and show them some love, because they're the reasons I'm in a position to share all the great stuff I got from them and give it back to you guys. But that's all I have for you guys for this episode. I will see you again next week for another episode of Comic Book Savant. You guys take care and have a good weekend. See you soon.